Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Root rot. What is it? Why does it happen? And how do I save my plants from dying of root rot? At the moment, I'm having quite a few issues with my watering schedule because my conditions have totally changed. And since I've moved, humidity levels are far lower, which means plants dry out more. So then I started watering more, and that has led to more instances of root rot. And there's also been higher temperatures in this space than my plants are used to. So I wanted to go through a plant of mine that currently has root rot and how I deal with it. Doesn't mean everyone deals with this way. There's lots of different ways to treat root rot and prevent it from happening. If you're a soil grower, I feel that it's quite easy to give a plant root rot. It could be to do with lack of aeration in the soil. It could be to do with bacteria that's transferred over from another plant. It could be to do with overwatering. It could be to do with underwatering. That's one thing that a lot of people maybe don't realize. So the plant that has root rot right now is my beloved Hoya krohniana silver, and I'll tell you how I knew it had root rot. The first thing that I noticed was, with my Hoyas, I normally wait until the leaves feel a little bit softer and less turgid. It feels like there's less water in the plant tissue, and then I'll give them water. So I noticed that with this plant. I noticed that it was getting shriveled up a little bit in the leaves, so I went to water it, and the next day it didn't plump up again. Okay, it stayed wrinkly. Can you see? The leaves are flat, they're easily damaged, they're really wrinkly, although I had just watered it. So that was telling me that the plant tissue, it was not being able, the roots were not being able to take up water. And one reason why roots might not be able to do that is because they're actually damaged roots. They're not serving their function as plant tissue. That was the biggest teller for me. So I was like, oh, this has root rot. What am I gonna do? I'll tell you the reasons why I think that this happened. I think what happened was I moved this plant from a place that it was very, very happy in our last house, and I moved it to brand new conditions. We're talking maybe 20% lower humidity, much higher temperatures, and just a generally drier space, and also different light levels. So the plant is under stress. It's already starting to kind of use its reserves to cope with these changing conditions and survive. So the plant is already under stress, like I said. Then I'm fairly sure what I did was I let this dry out way too far. I let it dry out too much. And when that happens, I'm going to put this down because it's exhausting. When that happens, when you dry out roots super too far, they become papery and they kind of lose their tissue begins to break down. Basically, all plants need water to survive. So it just makes them totally shriveled out. It makes them like paper. It makes the tissue unusable, basically. Then if you introduce water into that already desiccated root system, it can't take up the water. So it kind of sits in that, and desiccated root system and a lot of water, it will create bacterial conditions that can lead to rot, basically. So in normal conditions, your roots would be plump and hairy with root hairs. They'll be white, they'll be healthy. And when water's introduced to that system, they start to draw it out of there. They start to take it up. But when you introduce water into a desiccated root system, it basically just accelerates the decay process, basically, of those roots. So that's when you get stringy roots, you get mushy roots, you get just decay, basically, plant decay. I desiccated the root system. I forgot about it. You know, you're moving, you're doing a lot of other stuff. My plants did get neglected for a couple of weeks where I wasn't on top of it, on top of introducing them into a new condition. And then I watered it. So the first thing that I do with a plant that is showing signs of root rot is I will either take it out of the soil to just look at the roots. How far has this gone? Is this just kind of the lower level of the root system in the pot, or is it like the entire freaking thing is now rotted? That will give me a better indication on whether I should, what route to take next. Whether I should propagate it to try to save that plant tissue, or will I just let it heal from that root rot and kind of hope for the best? In many cases, I do the second option. I will try to adjust my watering schedules. I'll keep a close eye on it and see how it's doing. Is it recovering? Is it not? And then go from there. The first thing I did with this was I will get like a pencil or some kind of not sharp but long kind of object to aerate the soil in. So I want to be poking holes in the pot and kind of moving them around gently. This is not to destroy roots or anything, but basically I want the soil to be aerated. I want the water to be able I want the moisture in the soil to be able have, can I freaking speak today? I want the moisture in the soil to be able to evaporate a little bit faster than it would in like compacted soil. And the reason for that is because if these roots are sitting in wet water for a long time, it's just going to get worse. So I'll try that. And the next day I might see, is it drying out a little bit more or is it not? If it's not, then I will generally take it all out of the soil and I'll kind of let it dry out in the air a little bit before I put it back in the pot. That's something I try to refrain from, because the more that I'm taking it out of the pot, the more I'm also stressing the plant. So I haven't done that with this so far. I've been letting it dry out and I've been watering it, you know, at the appropriate time that I should. I'm not letting it dry out too far, but I'm letting it dry out enough to try to get back on a regular watering schedule for this plant. The roots that have rotted will not recover. They just won't. The plant will have to get rid of that plant tissue and start again. So basically, I'm trying to create super consistent conditions to allow the plant to regrow that root system. That will require consistent watering, in the sense that on a regular schedule, not let it dry out too far, not water it too often. As well as that, providing aeration. You can also do that by fans. I do use fans in my plant room to help with that. Air circulation is good. And also leaving the light levels as they are. Leaving the light levels what the plant is already used to, because I'm already changing these conditions. I don't want to be changing everything at once. It's too many variables. It's too difficult for the plant to kind of grasp that and adjust. So one thing I have noticed with this, I did lose one strand back here. That's fine. I cut that off. I let that go. You could take out that dead plant tissue. I didn't want to. I didn't want to mess around too much in the pot. What I have noticed is back here, some new roots have started to grow from the top here, and they're healthy, they're white. That's showing me the plant has enough energy to start to try to recover. And that's just how I'm doing with this. That's how I'm going with it, basically, for now. And that's the way that I've chosen to do it. I will film another update on this to let you know in a couple of weeks how this plant is doing. Did it recover with the ways that I choose to deal with this? And maybe it might help you in the future. Yeah, there's lots of different reasons root rot can arise, like I said. There can be the underwatering, which I've done now. There can be overwatering. The roots have taken up a lot of water recently. The plant tissue is full of water. There's so much water in there, and then you add more. And that plant isn't able to utilize that water because it's already kind of full of water. It's like if you eat a big meal and then you are given another big meal straight after, you cannot utilize that resource because you're full. Like, you can't fit any more food in your belly. It's done. You're full, you're at your limit. And so that food gets wasted, right? So the water gets wasted in the sense that if you're a soil grower, the water just sits in that soil. And the longer that water sits in that soil, the longer bacteria can start to kind of grow and the conditions get thrown off a bit. So in a lot of ways, you're facilitating the root rot bacteria to grow and start affecting your root system. So that's one way it can happen as well. I hope that has kind of explained on a surface level at least what root rot is and how it happens and how to either prevent it by giving your plants perfect conditions, which almost none of us can do. You know, we're not just sitting around all day and just taking care of our plants and not doing anything else. We can't be consistent all of the time, and our conditions can't be consistent all of the time. So generally this happens to everyone at some point, and it may be something that you continue to deal with, as I do. If you're not keeping on top of your watering, or you're watering too much, or your conditions change, or you already have root rot bacteria in your environment and it spreads. That's just the fact of it, basically. So maybe this will help you to understand what to look out for as well. If your leaves are super wrinkled and dried out and then you water it and they don't take in that water, there's a reason why that water isn't being taken up. And generally that means that the roots they're not doing their job. They're not facilitating water uptake into the plant system. So that is it so far. I will film a little bit of an update on how this goes. This is one of my favorite plants, so I'm very upset about it, and I hope that it works out. I'm going to be keeping a close eye and I will let you know. So guys, I have just filmed another video, but I think it's time to do another update on my Hoya krohniana silver. So the first section of this video was filmed on the 20th of March and it is now the 14th of May. So it's around 2 months that we have been keeping her going somehow. So she's still kind of going, but let me update you on what has happened. So as I said earlier, I have tried my best to be as consistent as possible with the watering, and I haven't moved it from its spot. So what has happened with this? Amazingly and hilariously, it flowered. Even though it was nearly dying, it flowered for the first time ever. I will insert a picture of what these look like. They smelled super delicious and really, really pretty flowers. I've never had a Hoya krohniana flower for me, so that was really exciting. And the peduncle is still there and on its second round of buds. Let me show you this a bit more closely. There's 2 peduncles. There's a third one. Can you see there? We have peduncle 1, peduncle 2. And there's the odd other peduncle also. So they are reflowering, which is hilarious. So how this is going, there's multiple different strands of this plant and not all of them are doing the same. Some of them are pretty good. They're starting to feel a little bit more firm, which is telling me that there is some root growth and it is firming up, but some of them are declining. Particularly some of the longer strands, which is understandable. It has far more leaves to support and the plant may be just dropping that. Let me show you. For example, this strand, as you can see, leaves are totally curled in. I'm expecting this to die. I may even cut it off. That is just not going to recover. It's been 2 months. It's just letting go of this strand, which is totally fine. It is a side section of a main section. So I think that this plant has just decided, okay, I cannot keep that going, and it's letting it go, which is fine. So a little bit sad. It's probably going to look less full, but I do have hope. For example, this long strand feeling pretty good. This is the one with the peduncles. It has 3 peduncles, feeling a bit more firm. Oh, dropped a leaf. This one is kind of in the mid-range, I would say. This one is the one I showed you that's not doing so great, and this one also not doing so great. There is an old peduncle there. 2 peduncles on this. An old one looks pretty dry, and this one's doing good, and this one's doing good. So the shorter strands seem to be doing better, and then 1 or 2 of the long ones are doing okay. In it for the long haul, guys. It's been 2 months. Like, recovery takes some time. This girl was sad. So yeah, that's how it's doing. So I feel that at least in part my method has worked, and that's how I choose to deal with my root rot. Many people deal with this in many different ways. Doesn't necessarily mean that all of them work for you, but it's an option that you could try. So it appears that I'm going to keep this plant so far, as long as I keep it consistent and don't mess up. If you want me to include like a super short video that's only a couple of minutes long in the future to let you know how this has fully recovered, I will. Let me know down below if you would like that. I think my long-term goal with this plant would probably be to wait for it to fully recover, for the leaves and stems to feel fully plumped up and healthy again, and maybe see some active growth. And then at that stage, I would probably propagate a little bit of it and try to replace the strands that were lost and plant them back into the soil. So that's what I'm going to do with this girl. One of my favourite plants. It still hurts 2 months later to see it this way, but you know, it is what it is. It's something that happens to everyone. Don't feel bad if you get some root rot. It is totally normal. Everyone experiences that on some level at some point in time, so don't feel bad. Also, don't stress unless your plant is really expensive, and that's why I don't buy expensive plants. I hope this video has helped you at all, maybe helped you understand root rot a little bit and given you some insight on at least how I deal with those situations. And yeah, I hope that it's helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again in the next one.